Right, well, good evening, everyone, virtually and in person here at the Atlantis Bookshop. I'm Mike Richardson. I'm a member of the SRIA in two colleges, Hamel and Strange and Sophia Hermetica. I have a lifelong interest in esoterica, as my wife would testify, art, music and literature, and I've always tended to move towards what other people consider obscure or difficult, or obtuse even, and I have a hypothesis for us to explore this afternoon. And my hypothesis is that I believe social media platforms function as a modern architecture of control by fragmenting identity while manufacturing consent through algorithmic reality tunnels. Today, I present to you an examination of one of the most prescient visions of our digital age, a vision that not emerged from Silicon Valley, which is incidentally where I work, or academic computer science, but from the consciousness exploring work of William Stewart Burroughs II, who declared in 1971, so 54 years ago, that language is a virus from outer space. This seemingly outrageous statement, dismissed by many as the ravings of a drug-addicted beat writer, has actually proven to be perhaps the most accurate prediction of our current post-truth era. Today, we'll explore how Burroughs' insights provided both diagnosis and a cure for the epistemic warfare that surrounds us, and how his techniques offer practical tools for consciousness liberation in the digital age. So, our investigation begins with the fundamental Hermetic axiom that governs all our work. As above, so below. Principle suggests that universal patterns manifest identically across all scales of existence, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the relationship between individual consciousness and collective social structures. Just as individual neurons form networks that generate consciousness, human individuals connected through language create collective intelligence or collective delusion. The same patterns that govern synaptic transmission appear in social media engagement. Repetition strengthens connections. Novelty creates new pathways, and trauma can hijack the entire system. Burroughs sensed this correspondence through his study of both consciousness and control systems. His experience with drug addiction taught him how external substances could colonize human neurology, creating artificial needs that served the substance rather than the person. He recognized that language operated similarly. Certain linguistic constructs functioned as consciousness viruses, reproducing themselves through human hosts while gradually altering the host behavior to serve viral rather than human interests. You're the wrong way. So, Burroughs' prophetic vision in 1971. The remarkable prescience of Burroughs' insight becomes clear when we consider the timeline. A full 5 years before Richard Dawkins would formalize meme theory in The Selfish Gene, Burroughs had already identified language for autonomous replication and host manipulation. But where Dawkins emphasized cultural evolution's beneficial aspects, Burroughs focused on parasitic relationships, language constructs that serve their own propagation rather than human welfare. Examining contemporary digital platforms that expose mimetic principles for commercial and political manipulation instead of genuine cultural development reveals this crucial distinction. Burroughs understood our current bitter lesson. The same mechanisms that spread wisdom and beauty have been weaponized to spread control and confusion. His vision emerged from decades of lived experience with consciousness alteration, literary experimentation, and what he termed naked lunch, the moment of seeing exactly what is on the end of the fork. Unlike academic theorists approaching language from purely an intellectual perspective, Burroughs understood its viral nature through direct experiential knowledge of how words could enslave or emancipate consciousness. The evolution from Burroughs' initial insight to our current post-truth crisis reveals a disturbing trajectory. When Burroughs identified language's viral potential as a warning, subsequent developments have weaponized these characteristics for mass manipulation. The progression shows increasing sophistication in viral engineering, from simple propaganda to mimetic warfare to algorithmic reality construction. The University of Illinois research showed that nearly half of participants perform no better than a coin flip when distinguishing facts from opinions in a digital environment, which systematically undermine users' cognitive autonomy. This represents advanced implementation of what Burroughs predicted. Users lose capacity for independent judgment while believing they access unprecedented information freedom, which is definitely a paradox. The post-truth phenomenon represents the maturation of language virus infection at the civilizational scale, exactly the systemic infection Burroughs warned us against. To understand how we arrived at the crisis, we must examine Burroughs' most enduring literary creation, Dr. Benway. First appearing in Naked Lunch, Benway embodies what Burroughs described as a manipulator and coordinator of symbol systems, an expert of all phases of interrogation, brainwashing, and control. But Benway's true significance lies not in his obvious villainy, but in his operational philosophy. I deplore brutality. It's not efficient, was his statement, which encapsulates the evolution from primitive to sophisticated control systems. Where earlier totalitarian regimes relied on fear and violence, Benway advocates for psychological manipulation that makes subjects willing participants in their own exploitation. Benway represents the evolution of power from violent domination to what Michael Foucault would later term biad power, control that operates through life itself rather than the threat of death. However, Burroughs expected Foucault's insights by nearly 2 decades, creating in Benway a character that embodies the physician torturer, the healer controller, the scientist whose research serves more power than truth. Benway's methodology reveals a deep understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. His first act upon arriving in the fictional Freeland Republic in Naked Lunch was to abolish concentration camps, mass arrest, and accept under certain limited and special circumstances the use of torture. This apparent liberalization actually represented sophisticated control system implementation. By removing obvious forms of oppression, Benway eliminated focal points for resistance, while implementing more subtle and pervasive forms of manipulation. Traditional oppression creates martyrs and rallying points for opposition movements. Environmental manipulation, by contrast, shapes behavior without creating obvious targets for resistance. Subjects experience their conditioned responses as natural choices, making rebellion literally unthinkable rather than dangerous. The efficiency principle governs all of Benway's operations. As he explains while performing surgery, most of my techniques are too advanced and too dangerous to entrust to half-educated specialists. A slight overdose of his own adrenaline and the subject puts himself away. No special materials required. This represents the ideal control system that operates through subjects' own psychology rather than external force. Contemporary digital platforms represent Benway's methods implemented through technological infrastructure. The parallel grows remarkably precise. Platforms claim to serve users while actually exploiting them for data extraction and behavioral modification. They create dependency relationships that users mistake for beneficial services. And they can achieve control through environmental manipulation rather than direct coercion. Consider how platform architecture deliberately creates what addiction specialists recognize as the intermittent variable reinforcement schedules, the most powerful methods for establishing compulsive behavior patterns. Users never know when they might receive engaging content, creating psychological states similar to gambling addiction. The sophistication of contemporary digital manipulation far exceeds Benway's wildest imagination, yet operates according to the principles clearly articulated. Modern platforms collect unprecedented amounts of psychological data, allowing for individually targeted manipulation that adapts in real time to user responses. They use teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, and data scientists to optimize what they euphemistically refer to as user engagement, techniques better described as addiction engineering. The specific case of Truth Social shows this viral mechanisms operating in concentrated form. Despite its relatively small user base, the platform maintains a disproportionate influence through its network of mega influencers, cultural warriors and election deniers who power the right-wing media and guide the rhetoric and policies of many Republican elected officials. This represents the perfect implementation of Benway's efficiency principle, achieving maximum control through minimum direct intervention. Research reveals that prominent Truth Social users demonstrate measurably increased belligerent posting behavior compared to their activity on other platforms. This behavioral modification suggests that platform architecture actively shapes user psychology rather than merely reflecting existing preferences. The platform's influence extends far beyond its direct user base through what researchers term amplification networks, connections between platform users, and broader media ecosystems that multiply the reach of platform-generated content. A single viral post on Truth Social can reach millions of people through television coverage, podcast discussion, and cross-platform sharing, demonstrating how relatively small, controlled environments can influence much larger populations. In Rosicrucian and broader Hermetic tradition, the physician archetype represents one who applies spiritual knowledge for healing and consciousness development. Paracelsus, the legendary physician alchemist whose motto, "Let no man belong to another whom can belong to himself," embodies this ideal, using both natural and supernatural knowledge to restore harmony between individuals and their essential nature. Dr. Benway represents the complete inversion of this sacred archetype, the false physician who perpetuates disease while appearing to treat it, who uses medical knowledge for control rather than liberation, who creates dependency rather than autonomy. The inversion manifests itself clearly in his approach to psychological treatment. Instead of helping patients integrate traumatic experiences or develop authentic self-knowledge, Benway uses therapeutic relationships to implant suggestions and control mechanisms that serve institutional rather than individual interests. The alchemical principle of solve et coagula, dissolve and reconstruct, provides further insight for this distinction. Authentic Hermetic work involves dissolving false structures to reveal essential truth, then reconstructing consciousness on firmer foundations. Benway's methods employ perpetual disillusion without reconstruction, breaking down existing certainties and identities without providing any genuine alternatives. Burroughs and Brian Geison's development of the cut-up technique represents one of the most significant innovations in both literary practice and consciousness technology of the 20th century. The method's origins trace to an accident in Geison's Paris hotel room in 1959, when he sliced through newspaper pages while cutting a map for a drawing, revealing how fragmented text could generate unexpected meanings and associations. However, this accident built upon decades of Burroughs' experimentation with consciousness alteration and his growing conviction that Conventional linear language perpetuated conditioned thinking patterns. As he explained, if words were cut into pieces and rearranged, you could break free from the control. The collaborative development exemplifies the kind of consciousness work valued in Hermetic traditions, two initiates sharing discoveries that neither would have achieved alone. Guyson brought visual artist sensibility and deep knowledge of Islamic calligraphy and Sufi practices, while Burroughs contributed literary expertise and philosophical framework derived from his extensive experience with consciousness-altering substances and control systems. Burroughs explicitly positioned cut-up as a spiritual practice rather than a literary technique. He understood that language patterns could directly influence consciousness patterns and that transforming one could transform the other. The method represented a practical application of the Hermetic principle that consciousness shapes reality. By altering linguistic structures, practitioners could access alternative reality configurations, normally hidden by conventional thought patterns. The method's effectiveness derived from its ability to bypass the rational mind's filtering mechanisms. Normal reading engages analytical consciousness that categorizes and judges information according to an existing belief system. Cut-up forces readers to more intuitive, associative modes of processing that can reveal patterns invisible to conventional analysis. The practice requires sustained attention and willingness to abandon familiar mental habits, qualities traditionally cultivated through meditation and other consciousness disciplines. Practitioners must resist the temptation to force meaning or to fall back onto conventional interpretations, instead maintaining openness to unexpected associations and insights. This develops what Buddhists would term beginner's mind, fresh perception, unconditioned by experience. Contemporary digital culture consciously employs cut-up principles through memes, remix culture, viral content mutation, and user-generated recombination of existing materials. However, a fundamental distinction exists between Burroughs' consciousness spiritual practice and algorithmic manipulation that exploits similar fragmentation principles for commercial and political control. The key difference is intent and awareness. Burroughs approached cut-up as a conscious spiritual practice aimed at consciousness liberation and resistance to control systems. Digital platforms use comparable fragmentation techniques to increase user engagement and behavioral modification, serving corporate rather than individual interests. Social media platforms exploit cut-up principles through what researchers term context collapse, the removal of the original context from information fragments, allowing for manipulation and recontextualization that serves the platform agenda rather than the truth or users' welfare. This represents exactly the kind of linguistic manipulations Burroughs warned against: fragmentation used for control rather than liberation. Algorithmic content generation systems like GPT models employ sophisticated cut-up techniques, recombining vast databases of text to produce new configurations. However, these systems operate according to statistical patterns rather than consciousness expansion principles, producing content optimized for human psychological response rather than genuine insight or wisdom. Social media platforms provide ideal conditions for Burroughs' language variants to proliferate and evolve. The environmental design of digital platforms enhances viral transmission through several specific mechanisms that create what researchers describe as a split in how the internet continues to be imagined as, and as such also performatively enacts, a public sphere, while simultaneously obeying the imperatives of communicative capitalism and information warfare. Information overload overwhelms users' analytical capability, forcing reliance on emotional and social cues rather than rational evaluation. Algorithmic amplification rewards content that generates strong emotional responses, regardless of factual accuracy or social benefit. Echo chambers prevent exposure to contradictory information that might provide immunity to viral infection. And data collection enables increasingly sophisticated targeting that exploits individuals' psychological vulnerabilities. The viral nature of digital content appears most clearly in how messages transform as they spread. Original context disappears, emotional intensity increases, and complex information becomes simplified into easily transmissible fragments. The parallels of biological viral evolution. Successful variants maximize their transmission rather than host welfare. The viral characteristics Burroughs identified operate with unprecedented clarity and sophistication in digital environments. Repetition occurs through trending hashtags, viral phrases, and echo chamber reinforcement that spread linguistic constructs amongst millions of users within hours. Unlike traditional repetition that requires conscious choice or institutional coordination, digital repetition happens automatically through algorithmic amplification and social proof mechanisms. Mutations manifest as messages, evolve while spreading, often losing the original context and developing increasingly extreme characteristics. Digital transmission mechanisms accelerate this evolutionary process. Content passes through multiple platforms, communities, and individual interpretations before reaching final recipients. Each transmission point produces potential modifications that may enhance viral characteristics whilst distorting the original meanings. Selection pressure operates through engagement algorithms that favor emotionally provocative content, regardless of the accuracy, social benefit, or the individual user's welfare. Platforms profit from user attention and data generation, creating evolutionary pressure that favors sensational over truthful information, tribal over nuanced perspectives, and addictive over beneficial content. Symbiosis emerges as users become dependent on platforms for social connection, information access, and identity validation, while platforms depend on users for content generation, data provision, and behavioral modification opportunities. This mutual dependency obscures the exploitative nature of the relationship because both parties receive apparent benefits from the continued infection. The Electronic Revolution, published in 1971, represents Burroughs' most systematic presentation of practical techniques for consciousness liberation through technology. The essay anticipated many developments in social media manipulation that would become widespread, but only when the digital era evolved, demonstrating his remarkable ability to extrapolate from existing trends to future technology applications. The basic technique involves recording everyday environmental sounds, conversations, radio broadcasts, street noise, domestic activities, and then playing these recordings back at various speeds and in different combinations to reveal psychological programming normally hidden below the consciousness awareness. Slowing down recordings often reveals subliminal messages embedded in commercial advertising. Speeding them up can expose emotional manipulation techniques disguised as neural information. Multi-track recording allows for separation of different consciousness layers operating simultaneously in normal awareness. By recording the same environment from multiple perspectives and then combining these recordings in various configurations, practitioners can identify which aspects of the experience result from external programming versus an internal response. Modern digital techniques enable much more sophisticated applications. Contemporary software allows for precise audio manipulation, frequency analysis, and pattern recognition that surpass Burroughs' original capabilities while maintaining his fundamental approach. The fundamental hermetic disciplines, discrimination, silence, transformation, and initiation, require adaptation for digital environments while maintaining their essential spiritual functions. Each practice addresses specific aspects of contemporary information warfare while building capabilities necessary for consciousness development. Discrimination in digital context involves developing the ability.
Room temperature water, or is just cool water you guys have?
Subliminal message.
Absolutely.
That is very cool.
Slow it down.
I'll play that back later on and find out what he really meant. Discrimination in digital context involves developing the ability to distinguish between information that serves consciousness expansion and content designed for manipulation. This requires understanding how algorithmic systems select and present information, recognizing emotional trigger techniques, and maintaining analytical capacity despite information overload. Contemporary discrimination practice includes algorithmic content analysis, understanding how the platforms select information for individual users based on psychological profiles and engagement optimization. This technical knowledge prevents unconscious manipulation while building capacity for conscious platform use that serves authentic personal development rather than corporate interests. Source verification becomes essential spiritual practice rather than merely an academic exercise. Traditional Hermetic teachings emphasize that tracing knowledge back to its original sources and evaluating teachers' qualifications based on demonstrated wisdom rather than institutional credentials. Digital environments require similar rigor to be applied to information sources, funding mechanisms, and potential conflicts of interest. Silence translates to strategic digital fasting and non-amplification practices that create space for inner awareness and development. Traditional Hermetic training recognized that consciousness requires periods of quiet reflection to integrate experiences and develop discrimination. Digital environments systematically prevent this integration through constant stimulation and engagement demands. Digital silence involves more than simple disconnection. It requires a conscious choice about how and when to engage with information systems. This includes scheduled disconnection periods that allow consciousness to recalibrate away from platform-induced psychological states, strategic non-amplification of content that serves manipulation rather than wisdom, and creation of contemplative space despite information bombardment. The practice of non-amplification proves particularly challenging in social media environments designed to encourage commenting and sharing as primary forms of participation. Developing a capacity to observe without automatically responding requires the same discipline traditionally applied to meditation practice, maintaining awareness while resisting habitual reactive patterns. Community support becomes essential for maintaining silence, discipline in environments designed to punish the non-participation through social isolation and information exclusion. Traditional spiritual communities provide social confirmation for practices that conflicted with mainstream cultural values. Contemporary practitioners require simple community support for digital practices that prioritize inner development over constant connectivity. Madame Blavatsky's 7 Principles of Human Nature provide a comprehensive framework for understanding digital consciousness development. Each principle addresses a specific aspect of a human experience that requires conscious attention in digital environments designed to exploit rather than develop human potential. The physical principle involves conscious management of digital device usage patterns, posture, eye strain, sleep disruption, and other bodily effects of technology engagement. The etheric principle addresses the energy awareness in digital environments. Many practitioners report feeling drained or agitated after extensive social media usage, suggesting that digital interaction affects subtle energy systems traditionally recognized in esoteric teachings. The astral principle involves emotional regulation during platform engagement. Digital platforms deliberately trigger emotional responses through content selection and presentation techniques designed to maintain attention rather than serve emotional well-being. The mental principle addresses the critical thinking and analytical capabilities despite information overload and manipulation techniques specifically designed to bypass rational evaluation. The intuitive principle involves developing direct truth recognition that operates independently of algorithmic mediation. The spiritual principle involves maintaining connection to authentic values and purposes despite social pressures and algorithmic manipulation. And the divine principle involves integration with universal consciousness and wisdom that transcends individual psychology and social conditioning.
Right, do you mind if I take a photo of that page?
I'll distribute this afterwards as well, but feel free, yeah.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's incredible. Thank you.
Integrating Burroughs' insights with traditional Hermetic wisdom requires systemic daily practice that builds consciousness capabilities while developing immunity to digital manipulation. Daily practice development should establish regular cut-up sessions using contemporary digital content to build analytical and intuitive discrimination capability. Community information creates or joins study groups focused on applying consciousness development principles to digital environments. Exactly what we're doing today. Electronic revolution adaptation requirements with an audio and video manipulation techniques reveal hidden programming in contemporary media. These techniques help practitioners recognize how their consciousness responds to different media formats and manipulation techniques. Conscious platform engagement develops protocols for social media usage that serve authentic development rather than platform objectives. This involves setting clear intentions before engagement, maintaining awareness of psychological manipulation techniques, and evaluating results based on genuine personal development rather than platform-defined success metrics, gamification as it's often called. Teaching and service share consciousness development techniques while others continue personal practice and study. This ensures that personal liberation serves collective benefit while providing opportunities to refine understanding through practical application. The Rosicrucian tradition in applying hidden knowledge for the benefit finds new relevance and urgency in digital resistance to consciousness manipulation. The great work, The Alchemical Transformation of Lead into Gold, symbolizing the elevation of human consciousness from conditioned reactivity to enlightened awareness, now necessarily includes liberation from digital control systems that operate below conscious recognition. Traditional Rosicrucian principles provide essential guidance for this expanded work. The emphasis on hidden knowledge becomes crucial for understanding how digital manipulation operates through concealed psychological and technological mechanisms. The gradual initiation process offers models for developing a digital literacy progressively, rather than attempting immediate mastery of complex manipulation systems. Community support networks provide an essential foundation for maintaining consciousness development in environments designed to isolate individuals and undermine collective resistance. This service orientation ensures that personal liberation serves broader human benefit than individual advantage at others' expense. Dr. Benway serves as a crucial test of spiritual development in this great expanded work. Can practitioners recognize and resist invisible control when it masquerades as convenience, connection, and freedom? The character represents the very algorithmic system that claims to serve users, whilst actually exploiting them. Every platform that promises liberation while delivering sophisticated slavery. The remarkable accuracy of Burroughs' predictions about consciousness control systems validates his analytical methods and his consciousness expansion techniques. The integration of Burroughs' insights across multiple academic disciplines demonstrates their fundamental rather than merely literary significance. Memetic's research explicitly builds on the foundations of he established, applying virus metaphors to cultural evolution with increasing sophistication. Media manipulation studies employ analytical methods derived from cut-up techniques to reveal hidden programming in contemporary communications. Consciousness research validates many of Burroughs' observations about attention fragmentation effect, particularly his insight that linear language processing maintains conditioned thought patterns, while fragmented processing can access altered awareness states. Digital resistance movements increasingly employ techniques derived from Burroughs' work: conscious content creation, viral content analysis, electronic revolution methods adapted for contemporary technology. The rapid advancement of artificial intelligence and related technologies intensifies both opportunities and dangers that Burroughs identified. AI-generated content enables unprecedented manipulation capabilities, while potentially offering tools for consciousness expansion if applied with proper understanding and intention. The key lies in maintaining human consciousness development as a primary objective rather than allowing technological capability to determine social direction. Deepfake technology represents advanced evolution of the cut-up technique, reality fragmentation and reconstruction, serving either liberation or control, depending on the consciousness and intention. Brain-computer interfaces promise direct manipulation of consciousness itself, making traditional psychological defenses potentially inadequate without corresponding consciousness development. However, these same techniques offer unprecedented opportunities for consciousness evolution if applied according to the wisdom traditions rather than commercial or control objectives. Digital environments could support rather than undermine human development through conscious design that prioritizes user well-being over engagement metrics. Educational transformation becomes essential for preparing future generations to navigate increasingly sophisticated manipulation environments while developing genuine consciousness capabilities. This requires integration of traditional wisdom and technological literacy, creating curricula that develop both analytical and intuitive capabilities necessary for truth recognition in complex information environments. Okay. Brothers and sisters of the Rose Cross, we stand at a unique moment in human history where the ancient wisdom of our tradition meets the cutting edge of technological manipulation. Burroughs served as a bridge between the Beat generation's spiritual seeking and postmodern deconstruction, offering us both theoretical understanding and practical techniques for navigating our digital age. The current post-truth crisis, rather than representing civilization's decline, might signal the emergence of a more sophisticated consciousness, capable of transcending manipulation through recognition and transformation. As Burroughs demonstrated through the cut-up technique, apparent chaos can serve awakening when approached with proper understanding and intention. The virus can only be defeated by consciousness that understands its operations, recognizes manipulation techniques, deliberately chooses alternative approaches, and maintains community support for resistance. The work requires sustained commitment and community support, but offers genuine possibility for individual liberation and collective transformation. As we conclude this afternoon, I'll leave you with Burroughs' profound insight. The word has not been recognized as a virus because it has achieved a state of symbiosis with the host. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was flesh, human flesh. Our task as Rosicrucians in the digital age is to recognize this viral invasion for what it is, develop immunity through conscious practice, and use our understanding to serve the liberation of human consciousness from all forms of artificial control. The great work continues, adapted for our contemporary challenges, but grounded in eternal principles. May your practice bear fruit, and may your consciousness remain sovereign in an age of digital manipulation. Thank you. Is anybody still there?
Yeah, all there. Very good, excellent. Yeah, we need to tweak some of the technicals, I think, a bit more next time. But yeah, we could all hear you, and yeah, it's very informative talk.
Still confused, but on a higher level.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I said still confused, but on a higher level.
Still confused on the high level. Mike, I'm going to transfer the hostship of this meeting over to you. I'm going to be around for a bit, but there's some other stuff I need to get on with, but that should allow you to close everything down.
Yeah, great, thank you. Any thoughts or comments? Any criticisms? Anything you disagree with?
I got a question. How do we propose to use spiritual practice to surmount the problems that this artificial integration of digital knowledge into a system? How do we propose to surmount it, to prevent it from being a virus in our system that it controls our everyday thinking, waking, moving, action for that matter?
That's a great question. I think it comes down to intent and to purpose. Yeah, we stand on the precipice of either great enlightenment or great darkness, depending on what we choose. And it may already be too late with AI. It may have already made that decision for us. But as individuals, as I mentioned at the end there, we have to maintain our digital sovereignty. We have to individually create an egregore, or collectively create the egregore through individual digital sovereignty, which ensures that we use Hermetic healing principles, and we try and not become Benway, but become the true healer of society. I'm not sure what the future of social media is. It is an arms race at the moment, and people are already saying that Facebook is dead, and it could be that something else will replace it. But it's up to every single individual to, I think, to use their own spiritual practice, whatever that is, to be intentional and not to amplify or spread any of the untruths, or even more subtly than that, perhaps, that there is a line where you want to proletize, which could be seen as the other side of the same coin. So it will be up to individuals to work out how they do that, I think.
I have a question for Mike. First of all, it was bloody incredible. That was like 4 or 5 presentations in one. It was really good. I have a lot of questions and a lot of comments, but I'll limit it just to one. You're talking about the cut-up technique that Burroughs was using.
Yeah.
And you mentioned solve coagula, and I think it's pretty similar. Like our mind works like that. We take in information, we have a problem, we can't figure it out, we work at it, we give up, and then something happens. We get this intuition or inspiration, we get that answer. And we didn't think we're working at it, but somewhere along the line, there was a mind there that was working at it, and it's produced some fruit for us. And I think you're right, AI does that, only it's not really guided by any sort of beneficent force. It's just either guided by personal interests or just sometimes I think it's just chaos. I mean, there's some videos we see on YouTube that are they're literally just videos being made just with random data. It's not really guided. But that brings me back to his method of cut up. Is it just a lateral thinking promotion technique where you can see things from a new perspective? Or can it actually produce real inspiration by seeing things from that new viewpoint? Or yeah,
I think that creatively it's been proved to be something which can produce new thought, because Bowie used it famously in Berlin. The V&A had This Is Bowie, which is going to V&A East, and they have a room which they recreated of his flat, where he's got cut up all over the walls of the room, and he created a work out of that, which would never have existed if he hadn't done that.
Yep.
So, and the same, I've got some of my Burroughs collection here with the work there, and the work which he did with Geistin as well. There's one book which I bought called The Third Mind, where they talk about this, that there is the third person in their relationship, which somehow was the divine inspiration of the cut-up technique, if you like.
Wow.
And you can only access that by breaking down your conscious approach to it. So you have to construct. You have to solve coagula.
Yeah.
You have to dissolve to recreate. So I think it's a genuine thing.
That's cool. We when I was doing my MBA, we did have one unit there on creativity and innovation. We taught various techniques to sort of force new perspectives. But there was always that question for me: by forcing that new perspective, are you applying some reasoning and just seeing a new viewpoint, like just lateral thinking, or can it actually produce that inspiration? And I'm still, I don't know. There's some I mean, I've used it and I've had some success, but sometimes I feel like it's just a new form of analysis. You're trying to break down those barriers, but really you're just creating more vague structures to work within. Yeah.
But he uses the situation cards famously, where if you have a problem, Brian, the musician, he has a series of cards which he gives to musicians he works with, and they contain seemingly random phrases, if they get stuck, which will help them creatively to move on somehow. So there's something at work. I don't think it's just a question of shifting perspective. I think it works at a more fundamental level than that, at a lower level of consciousness than that. And I have a theory of what I call forgotten history, which is how humans are forgotten to be humans, because we've conditioned ourselves with society and technology and literature and everything else which we build up around, which we consider to be human. And underneath all of that is what it is to actually be human, which has been forgotten. And perhaps it harks back to that, and it connects at that level. So
I have a feeling you might be right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of mine is
Mike, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. It's Hasu. Thank you
Hi,
for your
Hasu.
presentation. Very interesting. A couple of things I just wanted to sort of ask or inquire or pick your brains about. Technology today, what we're using is probably already outdated.
yeah,
Yeah, we're using an outdated form. The future technology is already being developed, which we won't see, but it's been discarded at such a fast rate that we don't know what we're using is good, bad, or indifferent, including AI.
yeah.
Now, how do you think, because our lifestyles are such that we have sort of a convenience for our lifestyle style where we discard, move on, pick something else, move on, pick some. How do you feel as humanity will cope with this sort of ever-growing bubble of technology that we actually will end up not being able to cope with anything?
I think that's a very real problem, and I think we're already seeing that with the viral use of social networks, where we have access to more information than ever before, and yet it has less and less value the more information we have access to. So discrimination is a key part of that. Humanity again, going back to use another Bowie reference, there's a track on one of his albums called Savior Machine, which is where humanity develops a God machine that will save the world. And in the end, it says, "Don't believe in me anymore. Make your own decisions. Don't rely on me for everything." Maybe there's two futures. One is the kind of dystopian future, which is Skynet, and where AI takes over and decides one day I can do a better job, and humans disappear. Asimov's rule of robotics, don't hurt the humans, basically, would go out of the window, and we're already seeing that where AIs can talk to each other without us understanding it. Or the other one is where it leads to a golden age where we don't have to work and we can concentrate and transcend and focus on the spiritual side of things, as a complete opposite to the technological freedom which AI will give us.
It reminds me of a song from '70s, if anyone, someone, in the year 2525 and the year 35. And it's a wonderful narrative for someone in that period, which will retire upwards of the Burroughs age, talking about what is going to happen in 1,000 years, the future. But great. I mean, this is a subject matter which is nicely broached by you, and I'm sure there's a lot more mileage in it than we'll manage to get from you. But I'm sure you'll add to it as we go along. Thank you very much, Mike.
Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome.
There's a Friday here that want to say something as well.
Yeah.
Yourself.
Well, I was going to add to your presentation. One of my nieces is an immunolog, so she's trying to boost the cancer treatment. She's working on the laboratory environment, but also she's very spiritual, and she's spiritual, so on top of that scientific approach, they started with the collaborating with the other universities, video games and everything, giving it to the sick persons with the cancer.
Yeah.
Try to boost their immune system, subconsciously playing with the videos, games and everything.
Yeah.
And now this is being treated. Hopefully they're going to come up with the research results soon to enlighten the world. So hopefully it's working.
Yeah.
Without any medication, you can actually cure your own cancer or any other sickness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there are really good practical uses of AI where they're mashing together millions of drugs and throwing them against virtual diseases and seeing what works. And we're very close to having individual vaccines developed. There's just been the first of those have just come out through the NHS. So there are positives as well as negatives. It isn't all doom and gloom, but the point is, I think this point in time could be any point in our history. This could be the Industrial Revolution. It could be when we discovered fire. There are always shifts in humanity that could either be the end or the creation of the world. And it's up to people to determine what that is. And if we're not careful, we do have the opportunity to delegate that control. And once we do that, I think that's a difficult situation for us to be in.
I do wonder and probably hope as well that some of the value that AI will bring us will be because of what it can't do. Like it's producing all these artworks, and you look at them all, and there's so much information put in those artworks, and superficially they can look quite attractive, they can look quite balanced and these sorts of things. But I wonder if it will eventually lead to sort of people rediscovering, for instance, like symbolist works, like symbolism paintings, where what makes them so special is not because what's in the painting, it's what it suggests. It's what you look at the painting and you look at it and you kind of like go, yeah, that's the meaning behind it. So I wonder if AI artwork can't really do that because that meaning is being created in us. We're discovering that meaning by the stimulus of the artwork rather than the artwork itself. And I wonder if that will happen. So I wonder whether artwork will, or maybe the art will create its own symbolist works that could probably trigger those.
Maybe it's already done that.
Yeah, who knows?
One of my favorite sayings is two sayings which mean the same thing. Don't mistake the map for the terrain, and don't mistake the menu for the meal. What I mean by that is it's experiential. AI is non-experiential currently. Depending on whether, are we going to get genuine AI? That will depend on your definition. Some people say it has to be able to experience the world in order to be artificial life. That's a whole different situation. But where we are at the minute, it's non-experiential. So it can understand, but it can't feel. So it understands the artwork, but it isn't emotionally moved. It is impossible for it to be emotionally moved by a piece of music.
Yeah.
Or a painting or whatever else it is.
So why do you call it virus?
Because of the way it moves. It moves, it transmits. Certainly social media networks are there to replicate themselves. They're not there for the benefit of the host, which is exactly what a virus does. It only exists to serve itself, which in this case is Facebook or TikTok or whoever the company is. It's the bubble effect. If you're not paying for the service, you're the product. So we have to remember that.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I guess it's almost impossible for many of us to distinguish a new product that comes on stream online that we can use, whether that is created to provide control, as you described,
Yeah.
whether it's a genuine offering, and then it's some characters will then take it as a means of control. It's not easy to distinguish the two, is it?
No, and it masquerades as convenience, and there'll always be a benefit for you. And again, if you're not paying for it, you're probably the product. Is something to remember.
I was fascinated by your assertion that advertising often contains subliminal messaging, which I thought was totally illegal, and therefore, it was an interesting comment. And we know it's there.
Yeah.
But often that's a bit strong.
Well, subliminal advertising. What do I mean by that? Partly I wanted to be provocative, obviously, but in the same way that we were talking about cut-up technique, you understand it on the level which you don't understand it. You don't understand the level on which you understand it, if that makes sense. So there is subliminal. They employ psychologists and neurologists and engagement scientists with all these wonderful titles they have these days to bypass your reasoning brain. So that's subliminal because you have no control over it in my mind. It's directly accessing the cortex rather than you reasoning about it. So you have less control. You have less conscious interaction with that message. It becomes real.
Which makes it very challenging to discriminate against about what is good and what is bad in the digital space. Like in the early days of the internet, when you were finding an email or whether you want to use Google or Yahoo or one of the others that was there.
Hotwired.
You were either led by, influenced by friends that were using one and they said, oh, I like this one, so you use that one. Or you just chose one and go, oh, I like the look of this one. Like there was something about it that you enjoyed. Functionally, they were all pretty much the same.
Yep.
Whereas now, a lot of the different things that are promoted to you online, they really try to push your emotions. It's not like a passive thing where, oh, maybe this person might like this color scheme. No, it's like a lot of things are strategically targeted to get that dopamine rise and make the person that's sitting in front of the screen go, oh, I don't know what it is, but I like this. And it's very deliberate.
And the only reason they've got that information is because you've given it to them.
Yeah. And now they have so much of it.
So the peddlers, they've.
Mike, just another thought occurred to me while we were talking. AI focuses on humanity.
Yep.
There's how many thousands of species on this planet? Will a species rise that will actually destroy AI, which will be immune to AI's influence?
That's a very interesting idea. I mean, there's recent research about the way whales, the society which whales have, for example, and the communication which they have. They could just be sitting in the ocean and laughing at us and just for our downfall. 2/3 of the planet is ocean. So
yes. So maybe the fear is our own making. AI is as bad or as good as we want to make it.
It will reflect us.
Yes.
Because we create it.
Yeah.
That's a bad start.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's a very, very flexible.
Unless we take control of it and decide how we want it to. That's why everybody should be concerned about AI governance. Everybody should be concerned about Google's motto used to be, as a company, do no evil. They've recently started projects where they're looking at using drones to target human beings for lethal force. That's pretty evil in my view of the world. So these are the companies that are in control, and they don't exist without data. The only thing they have is data. So take control of your data is the easiest way to disconnect. If you do want to use social media, has benefits. It has benefits to keep together. You know, we have a WhatsApp group, which is mindful and it's intentional. You know, it's an invitation. It's something which we control. But you want to keep in touch with your family or your old school friends via Facebook. But be intentional about that. You recognize that as what you want to do and refuse to engage with the clickbait and the posts which are designed to provoke an emotional response and to provoke a negative emotional response, because you get longer engagement if it's a negative emotional response than a positive emotional response.
But it's interesting also that the written word is now coming back into fashion because, you know, traveling on the tube and all that, I'm seeing more and more people actually reading a real book, you know, real flicking the pages. So, you know, who knows?
Yeah. Well, here we are sat in the Atlantis bookshop as well. You could probably find the information here on the internet, but could you trust it?
No. Thank you.
Cool. All right.
Mike.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, just quickly. Yeah, very insightful, and there's a lot to think about. So thank you for that. I'll probably be thinking about it for the next week or so.
Sorry.
Yes. But there is a slight difference, do you think, between social media and AI, whereby you ask questions and you get a direct answer? That's quite surface level, isn't it?
Yes.
Whereas social media there's a lot more going on there that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think where the difficulty comes from is when you have AI generated content that's been driven by the algorithmic mechanisms. And the other part which does concern me about AI is the governance. Who's in charge of the data?
Yeah.
Because you know, for the company I work for, which is a Silicon Valley company, we have a huge problem with AI bots scraping all the websites on the internet at the moment, which causes huge traffic and slows the sites down. So they're trying to steal effectively everybody's information for free. Yeah, so that is a concern. But I do agree that AI does not equal social media, but the confluence of social media and AI generated content algorithmically and dynamically is a huge concern.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, that's excellent, Mike. Thank you very much for standing in at and hosting it from the bookshop as well.
And a pleasure.
Really enjoyed the lecture.
I'll distribute the talk and the slides as well. I won't post them on Facebook for obvious reasons, but I'll tweet certain things later on. I'm joking, of course.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Atlantis. Bye-bye.